I sense a disturbance in the Force. Where? Ah, yes. The shuttle bays. An unscheduled Imperial freighter arrived just before me. So, someone was blocking the Death Star's sensors. Rebels. Not more than 6 of you. I can feel your presence. Come to me, rebels. Traitors. Unleash your anger. It brings you closer to the dark side.
Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today we're reviewing Star Wars, the interactive video board game. Released in 1996 by Parker Brothers, it's a dice-rolling video board game for 3 to 6 players, in which players are members of the Rebel Alliance, who have boarded the second hastily constructed Death Star. These rebels must evade capture whilst planting explosives in order to disable this Death Star before it can destroy a major rebel supply base. Like with Star Trek, the interactive VCR game that was released 3 years prior to this, players can only move in a clockwise direction and must gain access cards in order to access the inner ring of the Death Star to plant the final explosive. It deviates, however, from Star Trek in that the game has a traitor mechanic that comes into play halfway through the game, and players have 2 play pieces to move around the board, as opposed to just the one.
You, the rebel using the Force, stand up, look at me, address me as Lord Vader, and tell me your name.
It is also a game that is much more frantic in its pace, as Darth Vader interrupts the players on a much more frequent basis than his compatriots in Star Trek, or indeed Atmosphere, ever did. The production quality of the game is quite frankly superb, which proved to be a very pleasant surprise. I'd never heard of the game until a Twitter friend of ours by the name of Patrick Casey brought it to our attention, and thank you for that, Patrick. Because I'd never heard of the game, I had arrogantly assumed that it was a cheap cash grab that would recycle stock footage in order to cash in on the Star Wars license. But I'm happy to say I couldn't have been more wrong. For a start, my jaw literally dropped when I saw that they had cast James Earl Jones as Darth Vader's voice for this game, only to drop even further when I realized that David Prowse, who also played Darth Vader in the original Star Wars trilogy, made a return appearance, taunting the players with a newly constructed set and production design specifically made for this game. Duly chastened by the quality of the video footage, I was also forced to acknowledge that even the board itself is also incredibly impressive for the time, with a picturesque board adorned by a large 3D-style inner ring separating 2 sections of the Death Star, complete with an Empire Strikes Back style catwalk with a slot for the Rebels' final explosive. Players have 2 player tokens to use on the board, an R2-D2 unit that allows players to access data cards to assist them in their mission, and a Force-sensitive rebel who is the avatar that players use to plant the explosives. Players can also utilize Force cards to aid them in their missions. However, this can come at a price, as a Force card can just as easily hasten a player's descent to the dark side of the Force if they're not careful. And the player who accumulates the most dark side of the Force points may find themselves with a new and unexpected mission for the remainder of the game, and using their accumulated Force cards in a new and sinister way.
But Lord Vader, we have tried that.
There are no excuses, Commander. Security, seal all doors. Allow no one to enter or leave any control center.
Players are chased by a dice-activated stormtrooper who simultaneously imprisons players and defuses explosives. The stormtrooper, in turn, is eventually aided by a player who becomes Darth Vader's pupil and turns traitor. The pupil's purpose for the remainder of the game is to hinder the progress of the other players in the game by challenging them to duels and using Force cards to not only disrupt their decks, but to force them to skip turns. The game has a lot of bitty mechanics, and whilst not overly complicated, do seem a tad superfluous and can sometimes seem like busy work for the sake of busy work, whereas other ideas are tragically underdeveloped. The Traitor mechanic, for example, is a wonderful idea and adds a real fun element to the game, and it's let down by a silly, simplistic rock, paper, scissors duel system that does seem anticlimactic. The rotating of the gantry to delay rebels, for example, is a great idea that is criminally underused. However, to be fair to the game, anything more complicated than the most basic challenges would probably derail the game, as the pace is notably frantic.
Report, Admiral.
My lord, the rebel fleet is attacking.
Red 3, Red 2, pull in.
Key security systems have been damaged. Locks to the inner level have failed.
Stormtroopers.
Yes, sir.
The rebels can now enter the inner level. Proceed there immediately.
The interruptions from the video are much more frequent than I was used to with other games of this nature, especially in the final minutes of the game. The instructions advise the players to pass the dice as quickly as possible after their turn, and whoever wrote that was not kidding. The game deceptively sets a hectic pace without players realizing it, especially towards the latter part of the game, where Vader's pupil always takes their sweet time in taking their turn, which in turn only spurns the remaining rebel to play even faster in their desperate efforts to win the game.
Rebels, which of you has planted the least explosives?
The core tenet of any game, however, is fun, and this game is undoubtedly that. What little flaws it has are also instantly forgiven in a wave of nostalgia, epic music, superb production quality, James Earl Jones' incredible voice, and the taunts of the Traitor player as they seek to delay the rebels in the final minutes. This game, I have to admit, was a pure joy to discover and play, and a video board game I was shocked to have never heard of. If you're a massive Star Wars fan, or you have a massive Star Wars fan in your life, then this game is a must-have. A superb experience and a gem of a game that is not difficult to get for a fair price on eBay, or indeed your vendor of choice. This is Sean from The Lucky Roll. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And until next time, good luck, God bless, and remember, Luke, to use the Force.